Hi, my name is Matt Mellott with Sterling Commercial Real Estate, covering the Missoula apartment market for 2025 and looking ahead to 2026. If you look at the construction pipeline for Missoula, it's been pretty steady with the new deliveries in the 450 unit range in 2025. And then looking ahead to 2026, we're on track for roughly 500 to 550 units. If you look at that relative to population growth and the demand for new units, that is roughly in balance, where the delivery of units will be absorbed by population growth demand. So, assuming again that population growth rate continues what it has been for the past 5 to 7 years, then we have a pretty healthy development pipeline that is laid out in front of us here for Missoula. On the vacancy rate has stayed generally between 4.2% to 4.6%. You get some fluctuations based on seasonal impacts, seasonal factors. And then as a large project delivers, then you'll have these little spikes and troughs in the vacancy rate. But in general, pretty healthy vacancy rate, maybe even a touch low. But if you compare that to a place like Bozeman, where you have a 13% vacancy rate for apartments, we're looking pretty healthy overall. So that's the construction side of apartments in Missoula. I think if you look at the rental rates, you're seeing that there's quite a bit of demand for the larger units. So 2 bed, 2 baths, 3 bed, 2 baths, townhome style, even some that have garages. It's been a pretty significant increase in the asking rate and the attained rate for these larger units, with rents increasing by as much as 10% year over year. But then if you look at the rest of the floor plan layouts, so the studio, 1 bed, 1 bath, 2 bed, 1 bath, you're actually seeing a pretty flat market, or actually a slight decline even. So that's worth noting, that you have this contrast and that there's pretty high demand for these larger floor plan layouts in Missoula. On the transaction side, we are seeing very little transactions happen in Missoula in 2025, even though there's been a lot of units that have hit the market. So things like Ashland Place, which is close to the old sawmill district, there's a 100-unit portfolio that also hit the market. Has been slow to trade. Pine up on Hillview as well is on the market. And so you have these properties on the market. There's plenty of buyer interest, but there's still a disconnect between what buyers are willing or able to pay based on financing considerations, and then what sellers are willing to let them go at. So that has kept a damper on the transaction market overall. That will probably persist into 2026, at least the early part of it. But then as we get further into 2026, there's more and more debt terming, where either a refi will need to happen at an elevated interest rate, or some other factor that will basically force a sale, or it will incentivize owners of apartment assets to really look hard at, do I want to try and refi this, or would I rather take a slightly lower price to make the connection happen? So I think it'll continue to be slow into the first 2 quarters of 2026, but then as we get further into the year and then into 2027, that you'll probably see transaction volume pick up. So that's the summary for the Missoula apartment market. Thanks for watching.